We are live. One of my favorite times of the day. So basically, whenever I get together with Bobby, it is an immediate relief for me, and it is always arguably my favorite, if not one of my top 2 or 3 moments of each week, depending on if I'm having a amazing week or if I'm having a good week, and if I'm having a bad week, it's always number one. So
let me say right back at you, John, that whatever it is that we wind up talking about, and it seems we've talked about just about everything at one point or another between your experiences and mine. We got a lot of territory, but I never come away thinking anything but, boy, that felt good. So it's a two-way. It's a two-way street. Let me tell you, I always feel better having spoken to you, even when we're dealing with subjects that may not, on the face of it, be that enjoyable.
I think that's the best part about it, because what we'll usually do is every couple of weeks we'll go to the diner, we'll go to Sushi Mike's, we'll go to one of our spots, and obviously with COVID and the virus, it's just we're getting creative. So last week we actually had a great phone call. I felt like we were right there at the diner again, and it was just a good way for us to kind of really catch up, because just to let the people know who are listening before we dive into it. So me and Bobby go way back. He is one of my biggest mentors and one of my heroes. And he's helped me through a lot of.
You got to pick your heroes more wisely.
And it's funny because I got to know Bobby through my mom and my sister and my dad when he was the Little League softball coach with his daughter Madeline and my little sister Lisa. And his nephew, Frank, is one of my best friends as well. And it was funny because I remember we would just go up after games and Bobby would throw me some batting practice and I'd be there trying to hit bombs out of Springhurst, trying to show off the guns, trying to be the man.
Nothing under 420 feet. Nothing, ever.
I remember I was 13 years old hitting the ball 420. I mean, I thought I was going to be on the Mets, but.
Yeah, and that's when it went off the handle. I mean, when you got the fat part of the bat on it, that 5'10", 5'15".
5'15", 5'20", and it was great because that was really special because that just those moments really led us to a really deep relationship. As we got older, we started getting closer and closer. And when I first told him about the podcast about almost 3 years ago now, we actually sat down and recorded a podcast about some of our own experiences and about Bobby's own struggles and own triumphs with his anxiety and his mental health journey. And I think I'll never forget that episode because it was one of the first ones we ever did. And it was arguably between that and Clint Malarchuk. I think those were my two favorites in different ways because Clint's a person I haven't known nearly as long. So it was more of like the whoa factor of having someone like Clint right there next to you. But having Bobby right there, someone that I've known for so long, open up about some of these things that he had struggled with for such a long time has helped me center myself so much on my own journey. And it was just so wonderful because I remember just even talking about how you went back to catch a pop fly back in the day at Hastings, and all of a sudden that was when some of the anxiety really, really hit for you. So I think it's just when you see someone that you look up to open up, someone that you see as so strong, it makes you think even higher of them because you realize that even these people who, like Bobby, who I have admired since the day I met him, for him to be able to open up fills me with so much hope and fills me with so much comfort during my struggles. And I think that's something that we try to do here at the foundation is, we always say what John Kelly did for so many people is he provided comfort. And what Bobby does for so many people is he provides comfort for so many others. And, to be able to help you in any way always means the world to me. Whenever you say that, it gives me goosebumps because it's like, what, that's what it's all about. And, it shows that, Bobby's 31, I'm 30. We're only a year apart, but it doesn't matter.
I have underwear older than you, John.
It shows that age is not it shows that, listen, age, it doesn't matter how old you are. It matters how you connect. And I think that's a powerful message for those out there is, there's a lot of people that want to help and there are very special relationships to be formed. And, I consider Bobby literally one of my best friends and a hero of mine. So That's
Well,
powerful introduction, I guess.
I'm flattered on both counts. First of all, I'm not a hero. I've just got a few years on you, and I've just been dealing with the stuff that we both deal with the anxiety. I've just had a little bit more practice at it, just and that's just a function of having been walking the earth a little bit longer than you. But it doesn't go away. But I think the one thing that experience gives you is you start coming to a point and realizing that, okay, I can live with this. I can. I can't make it go away. I'll never be able to dial it down to zero. I'm not going to be Gary Cooper anytime soon, at least not in this lifetime. There's a price that we pay for feeling. I feel things deeply, and John, I know you do as well. And that sensitivity is a two-edged sword. It allows us to bond with people in very meaningful ways, but it also leaves us vulnerable to things like anxiety, to feeling things maybe a little bit more deeply, good and bad, than other people do. So I do think it's important to share about that. I remember when I was a kid, and Mickey Mantle was on, I can't remember if it was a Tonight Show or one of those types of shows, such as they existed, some kind of talk show. And he was on with Paul Simon, the musician to date myself, from Simon and Garfunkel. And he grew up even though he grew up in Queens, there were no Mets when Paul Simon was growing up. He was a huge Yankee fan and a huge Mickey Mantle fan. So there he was, a guy with a number of gold records, and Mickey Mantle, who was Mickey Mantle, sitting there. And Mantle was talking about how he used to wet his bed when he was a kid. And I remember Paul Simon's reaction. It was like, wow. And you could feel the relief that Mickey Mantle had just shared something about himself that made Paul Simon, who is a very accomplished person in his own right, feel better about himself because of something that, now he didn't come out and say that Paul Simon didn't come out and say that he wet his bed, but whatever it was, that flaw, that some people would see as a flaw, and other people would say, well, it's a human characteristic. Paul Simon was able to take Mickey Mantle's strength, and feel something about himself. It was just amazing to see. It was almost cathartic. So I do. I got plenty of faults, which is why I talk a lot, because I believe they should be shared. And again, I'm not talking about, opening up to every stranger in the world, because, I would just bore people to death. But if somebody wants to talk, if somebody has some questions, I always feel better. It's a very selfish thing. I feel better when I share something about myself that somebody can relate to, that identification, that very human connection that you and I have, that transcends age, that transcends ethnicity, that transcends so many things about us, other than we're both human beings. And I think we forget that from time to time, that, we're all Mickey Mantles to that degree. We're all bedwetters. We're all flawed. And I think sometimes a lot of the anxiety is created by this belief that we have to be perfect. Well, no, we don't. I'm living proof of that. If you had to be perfect, I would have been gone a long time ago. But you can make it a long way being imperfect.
I think that's what's so special about this, and is just, when you tell that story, when you talk about that power of being vulnerable, what it can actually do, especially when you see someone that with Simon, seeing Mickey Mantle, someone he probably idolized in terms of just his, the way he played, and how he's this hero. And when he hears him say that, it's like, oh my God, like that makes me feel better. That makes me feel normal. And it just shows that it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. When you're open with people and when you're honest and when you're authentic, you can build these relationships that last forever, really, and that are able to help you get out of those dark times. Because like you were saying before, you said, you selfishly feel good. Well, I selfishly feel good listening to you, so it's like, it's one of those things where, when you put yourself out there and when you do it in an authentic way, when you do it, because you want to share and you want to be there for that person, it really goes a long way, because people can take that in, and people can feel, wow, this person really does care about me, and this person does want to see me do well, and I feel comfortable sharing some of my deeper, darker secrets with you, because I know I get a lot out of it, and I know I'm able to improve and to become a better human being. And I think that's what it's all about. The more conversations and the less people judge and the more people open up, it's incredible what can happen from there. It's incredible the amount of healing that you get from being able to not be afraid of who you are, because you have someone that you already look up to going through something similar. And I think, like you were saying too, is one thing, especially during these times, that has, I think, really centered me. And it's interesting because this last week I've been doing a lot more kind of in the moment and mindfulness, and the way that you speak, especially about, how you may not be the anxiety master yet, but darn, you've come a long way, and you have a very calming and kind of Zen way about you, right?
Well, you should see what's going on the inside, John.
Well, I think that's the thing though too, is, when you have those thoughts and when they do race, I think, we talked about this a little bit last week when we were just chatting on the phone for a while, is almost being able to be proud and be happy and present with what is going on, and having, not always having to do 10 million things to be this successful human being. And it's something that I suffer with very deeply, especially when things are rolling. We're going into the schools, we're doing this, and I wouldn't give it up for the world. But at the same time, sometimes I put too much unnecessary pressure on myself. I don't need to wake up at 6:30 a.m. to email 100 school districts just in case. There's things that I can do for myself, like going outside and taking a walk, like having these conversations with you, that have been recentering me more, and I've been having deeper connections with people, and I've been doing less work, but being so much more creative. I don't want to say less work, because like you were saying, is you activate a different part of your brain, right? When you're not putting as much pressure on yourself. And this morning, before I was talking with you, Emily, who is our program developer and designer, she's awesome. We were talking about just some awesome fundraising ideas and some new ideas of doing things like, doing things that bring more people together. And she came up with about 10 ideas that I looked at and like, these are freaking awesome. And it shows that even during these really tough times, if we can stick together, it allows us to be creative when we least expect it. We don't need to force that creativity either. It'll come sometimes when you're slowing down a little bit.
I think we talked about it last week. You're right. I read a biography a few years ago. Walter Isaacson wrote a biography about Albert Einstein. And, I just wanted to cement how far away I was from being an Albert Einstein. So I read the book and found out, yes, I have no Albert Einstein. But in any case, fortunately for humanity, Albert Einstein was an Albert Einstein. But he wrote about Einstein's belief in just what you're saying, that you have to sometimes distract yourself from a conscious effort to control your thought processes in order to get somewhere. And when he would have a particularly difficult problem to solve, which is obviously far more complex than any problem I would ever come across, he would stop pushing it and he would go play the violin. That was his hobby, was playing the violin. And that would somehow activate some part of his brain, something subconscious, something that wasn't so rational, something that wasn't pushing, but it would liberate something. And in his reporting, Einstein's self-reporting, invariably an idea would come. because he had kind of walked away from it, because he had kind of left it alone, because he had stopped with this, lockstep focus on it, and focused on it in a slightly different way, came at it a little bit more from the outside, and something would happen, something would trigger. And I think we can kind of all relate to that. How many times something has occurred to us in the shower, or 2 days after we've had a conversation, it's like, oh, that's what it meant. And you didn't even realize you were thinking about it. But in your own mind, you were kind of turning it over, even though you weren't sitting there reading the transcript of the conversation that you had just had. So I do think that's an important thing. And I think for people like us who tend to believe that we can control outcomes if we just work harder, focused harder, stared at it harder. Yeah, there are problems that can be surmounted through effort, but sometimes effort has to happen at a level that we're not so conscious about it.
Yeah. It's almost like that subconscious level that you don't even know is thinking.
Yeah. I come from an advertising background, and we used to kid about when, I'll tell you how old I am. When I started in the business, nobody had heard of timesheets. Nobody knew what a timesheet was, let alone a computer. It was just kind of like you got paid a salary, whatever that salary was, and whatever it took you to get to the end of the road is what it took you to get to the end of the road. And we used to always kid, once they started doing timesheets, it's like, so if I come up with an idea while I'm in the shower, or if the idea reveals itself to be in the shower, do I get to put down the time I was in the shower on my timesheet, or how does this work? But it's true. Your mind, whether you want it to or not, will work without you having to shove it into fifth gear all the time. It will work. And consciously trying to shove it into fifth gear all the time can also be a recipe for it not working.
Mm-hmm. I think that's like one of the hard things that's going on right now, in a sense, for some people, is it's such a, a lot of people are being affected differently by what's going on in the world. Some people are getting sick, some people are dying, and it's devastating. We're talking about how hard it is, being an empathetic person and trying to shut that off at times so you can stay healthy, but also being so aware of what's going on because you want to do what you can to help, anything possible to help. And you have other people that are really, in a tough financial situation, and everyone's taking some sort of hit, for the most part, in some way, shape, or form. I think some are just more fortunate than others. And I was telling you, we're lucky enough that, of course we're taking a hit, but there's so many other people that, we're worried about more than ourselves, and I think that's also our nature in a sense too, is to, always look out for those who are less fortunate, the doctors, the nurses that are on the front lines, the people that are losing their jobs, the businesses that are going out of business right now. And, I think one of those scary things is like when you are in that fifth gear and almost feeling that panic, how to slow that down, right? And how to try to, make the most out of the situation in front of you, whatever it may be. And I've noticed that whenever I panic, sometimes it helps. Sometimes out of panic, you get really good ideas, and sometimes you get really productive in a sense, but sometimes you get so overwhelmed and so overbearing, and it's counterproductive, and you just start doing things irrationally. And it's like, trying to deal with that panic, is something that is so difficult. And I think where I got pretty lucky is when this all happened, instead of panicking, I had a few moments of panic. I'm not going to lie. There were a couple of days where I felt really down, and I felt, oh my God, what are we going to do? We can't be in schools. We can't do it. And then, I think where I got really lucky is having this community around us and having so many amazing people share their experiences and slow down. And instead of panicking, let's think outside the box and try to get creative in a sense, and try to be, try to build something differently, then, don't be so set in your ways. And that helped me. But I mean, I guess for you, in terms of that whole panic feeling, what have you been doing? What are your suggestions? Because sometimes, maybe some things you don't have to panic about too. That's the thing, I guess, trying to kind of piece those two thoughts together in a sense.
Right. That's a good question. I think, I think it comes down to idiosyncrasies. I tend to be the type of person who will, given their druthers, try to over-inform themselves, as if some personal knowledge that I have is going to give me some control over what's going on. And you know what? It doesn't. And so for me, again, we're all different personalities. I spend time, on the crisis in terms of, I will give myself a certain amount of time to read, a certain amount of time to check in with the television, and that's that. It can't be the only thing that I'm doing. So, that's one way is knowing the things that are going to trigger me and, keep me, kind of in this state of turmoil. And the other thing is really, I'm very fortunate now that in some ways that I'm back in school. I'm taking a degree now in social work. And I listen to the stories of people who are not as fortunate as I am to be able to shelter in place in the fairly comfortable surroundings with my wife, who, God bless her, has put up with me for a lot of years. And she's the person I would be choosing to shelter in place with if I had to choose somebody anyway. She's just she's just good people. So I'm fortunate in that degree. My circumstances are not so terrible, but I listen to some of my classmates who are living in the city, who are in less than ideal circumstances, who are trying to balance a job because a couple of them work in addiction treatment centers and they're essential personnel, with school, with children, in not always idealized living circumstances. And it helps me get out of myself a little bit. I hate to say it, but it does. Hearing other people's stories lets me sit back and go, okay, the pity party is a little over. It's time for the pity party to be over a little bit in terms of body Reiser. And I don't mean that one should ignore their own feelings. I have my anxiety and I have to identify that. I need to feel that. I need to deal with that. But I also need to I need a little reality check now and then to go, okay, you know what? It's inconvenient. It's not tragic for me. It is tragic for other people. And remember that.
And I think you hit the nail on the head there too, because it's, it's one of those things where we talk about it a lot with students, of just almost like the theory of relativity, right? Obviously, everyone's pain is pain to them in a sense. Mm-hmm. And I think what's important about this, and this has helped me too, it's funny, or I'm the same way of like almost 99% of the time, is, when my depression and the anxiety and the OCD starts to really act up, right? And I get in like a little bit of a rut where maybe sometimes I get in these situations where I'm supposed to be doing something, but I'm just literally doing nothing for 45 minutes, whether it's scrolling or watching TV or sending one email when I should have sent 15. And I'll get in those situations where I'll start frustrating myself. And then I'll be like, you know what, John, slow yourself down. You are so lucky to be where you are every day. And something that I started to tell myself actually before this pandemic happened was, you have the opportunity to help someone every day. And that's always been your dream ever since you were a little kid. And I think that is something that really, when I keep that in my head every single day, even during those dark days, it allows me to get out of my head, get out of my bed too, head and bed, and sit there and say, okay, what can I do today to help society and to help myself? And usually when I'm helping society, it's helping me help myself. And that's why it's like, when I look on the news, and it's that combination of trying not to get too into it, because it can really take people like us down those dark holes of trying almost to help when we can't in certain situations, and thinking so much about these horrible stories that you're hearing and getting lost in them. And it's such that weird feeling of, right, where it's like, my God, you want to feel at peace with yourself, but man, you just want this to stop so people can live a normal life and be healthy again. And you want to protect those people who are suffering and make sure that those people don't get more sick. And it's just, you think about all the things that you do have, and you count your blessings sometimes. And I know that sounds corny or cliche, but gratitude is such an important thing, because, even I was even saying, even if I have a cold or I wasn't feeling good, I'm lucky enough that I can, knock on wood, heal. and I'm lucky enough that I can isolate. And I think something that, there's an Indian doctor that says something really powerful. I saw it on social media, was that, hey, you're lucky enough to socially isolate. I'm sorry, not socially isolate, to physically isolate. You are, you're able to be 6 feet and social distance. I'm sorry, social distance is the correct word, but you're able to social distance. Some people can't do that. And when you hear stuff like that, it's like, you know what, that allows you to say, okay, I got to do what I can to do my part to get this to stop, so I can try to flatten this curve in any way I can. I think that's been a powerful, eye-opening thing, is, hey, we got to be thankful for what we have, no matter what, and that's trying to, knock on wood, keep everyone around us healthy the best way that we can.
And listen, I think it's important to create a balance between fact and feeling. We're going to have feelings, and those feelings are right. These are very dislocating times for everybody, not just us, not just those of us who tend to be prone to anxiety or depression. But these are tough times. This is a crisis, and one of the complicating factors in this crisis, and we've talked about this, is that we're being asked to do nothing. Just do nothing. Which is, for us, it's one of the hardest things to do. I mean,
still brain is tough.
Yeah, just please, if you want to help, do nothing. It reminds me of, in the old movies when I was a kid, whenever, there was these scenarios where a woman was about to give birth on the frontier and the doctor would come charging into the farmhouse, and the first thing the doctor would say to the husband was, boil some water. And I remember asking my mom one time, after I'd seen this movie after movie, why do they keep telling the father to boil water? And she said, oh, that's just to get him the heck out of the way. And that's kind of what we're being asked to do. Just go boil water.
Yeah.
Just get the heck out of the way from a physical standpoint. And, somebody wiser than me came up with a differentiation. And I know social isolation are the words that we've been asked to work with collectively as a culture. But really, it's physical isolation. We don't have to socially isolate. We're talking right now.
Yeah.
It's not ideal. It's not the diner. There's no wheat toast dripping in butter.
Oh, that sounds good right about now too.
It does, doesn't it? But we're not socially isolated. We're not. We're talking to one another, and I'm taking classes, and you're keeping in touch with your community, and things are happening. So we're not being really asked to socially isolate. We're being asked to physically isolate. And that's not easy. I'm not trying to poo-poo it, but let's remember that, because I think that I even notice that if I go outside to take a run, and I'm being very good about the 6-foot rule and staying out of people's ways, but you kind of develop habits, and along the way. And one of my habits is, if I pass somebody even from 6 feet, is I always wave.
Wave.
And people are not waving back. And it's like, no, you can wave back. You just have to stay 6 feet. It's okay. But people, I think, are starting to get into this mindset that I have to put a wall up between myself and you. And yeah, there needs to be a physical wall. That's what we've been asked to do to help. And that's what we should try to do to help, I think. But, we don't have to build a social wall. There are other ways to reach out to people.
I think that's such an important point that you brought up right there too. And I've been thinking about it all the time. And I've been sending little messages to schools. And we've been talking about the difference between social and physical isolation, not being afraid to still open up to your friends, to talk to your friends, to get on FaceTime, to make those phone calls, to, just stay in touch, however it may be. And I think like another huge thing during this time is, as hard as it is, we still have to do our best to make the most of it, to be happy. And there's nothing wrong with still doing things that make you happy during this time. Like when even waving at those runners, like it's the same thing for me. When I see people, I'll always smile. It's just something I've always done. Like I'll, if I'm walking on the street and I pass by my neighbor that I don't know, or I just will always wave and smile and make like a friendly face, so they know that, they're not alone, so to speak. And I'm not ignoring them, because they are another human that has a soul, and it's like, you want to be able to feed that in some way. And I think it's like, what's so important is trying to live by example of still being ourselves, because if we can be ourselves during these dark times, it makes us even more powerful and more strong when things get good again. Obviously it's harder for some others than for some than others, and some situations are obviously dire for some, but at the same time, it's like trying to do what I can to still be who I am. And I love that, because it's like, I love smiling, I love dancing around my apartment and listening to house music and just like releasing myself and just having these conversations and being the person that I love, and I think it's nice to be able to say that you love yourself at times, and that's not always easy for me to say, but like doing those things that make me happy and doing those things that fill me with joy, and trying to embracing them and taking them in and being so grateful for that and spreading that to anyone that you can, because getting other people out of their hole is something that I think is so powerful. And I think when you can do that by being who you are, by you smiling at that person, you might have made their day without even realizing it. But by me making a weird dance video for my friends, they might sit there and crack up, and it'll give them a little bit of a hope, if they're going through something, right? And it's like not being afraid to give that hope, to be who you are, during these really bad times, is something that I just want to get across to so many people. Because if you're a student, do your art project, smile, make up a dance, have some fun with your friends, obviously distance yourself, but don't let this get in the way of your personality, and let yourself still shine during this time.
You raise a great point. I think it'd be easy for sometimes for folks like us to develop some bad habits.
Yeah.
At a time when we're being told to isolate, that we start emotionally and socially isolating as well as physically isolating. You raise a really good point. This is a great time to, kind of encourage ourselves to get out of ourselves a little bit, because I think sometimes in ourselves can be a difficult place to live. And again, it's very important that we recognize our feelings. They're valid. Anybody who's not feeling stressed or anxious in times such as these, I don't believe can have a pulse. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Chuck Yeager. I mean, it's just like, these are unsettling times, and feeling anxiety and stressful times is a very human reaction. It's there to protect us. What we have to do is make sure that we can balance that. Balance the feeling with a certain amount of fact and with a certain amount of healthy distraction.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing point too, because during this, I've had people reach out. I've talked to some friends, and especially knowing people who suffer from addiction, who suffer from substance abuse disorders, and it's something that's very real amongst a lot of people, and it's something that, I think is even becoming more and more mainstream. And it's important to show anyone that's going through that they aren't alone, and that, this is a very difficult time. And for me, I've been lucky enough with my own vice that, I haven't really had an opportunity to do it, and, that's something that is almost like this weird gift in a sense from all this, which always, makes my own head spin a little bit when I think about that. But the point of the matter is like it's allowed me to get out of my head a little bit and understand that, okay, I don't necessarily need that vice, to live at times. Right. And I don't need to fall into that. And I think for me, that's something that is super, super powerful during this time. And for people who are suffering, and, I've been thinking about a lot of friends who I know that go through certain things, is, hey, it's easy. Like, isolation is the core of addiction in a sense, right? We want to be in our own head. We want to be in that space to escape from something at times, and I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I know, a lot of people I've talked to, we have a very similar thought on that, and myself, my own personal opinion too. And it's, isolation was something that addiction can thrive in, right? And that can really, it can be something that really it's isolation and addiction are best friends. You know,
Mm-hmm.
those they're that bad group hanging out that's trying to bring you down. You
Yep.
know, and I think when you're able to start getting out of that isolation feeling, like for me, I've been less isolated than I think I've been in a long time, believe it or not. Right. And, you know, when I'm in the schools, I feel more connected than anything, but it's those in between times where I get very isolated, you know, and where I get very much in my own head. Am I doing things to take care of myself? Am I thinking about my love life? Am I thinking about my future? Am I thinking about what makes me happy? Or am I just going to get myself lost in this kind of trap? Right. And I think that's such a powerful feeling out of this whole situation, is that I actually have been thinking more about myself and about what I want to be, and what I like, without letting that vice get in my way. And that's been, you know, a blessing for me, but it's also one thing where I'm so aware of what's going on with other people. And it makes me think about those suffering even more right now. You know, it's like, you know, I hope that you can take this and understand that maybe this is a time where, you know, you can get better and you can heal a little bit. And I have, you know, I don't want to speak too soon because I have a whole lot of work to do. But the point of the matter is, I felt a lot better about who I am lately. I've been more proud of of myself. And, you know, and, you know, even when I fall back into those vices, if it does happen, you know, I can still be proud of myself. And that's an important thing. If you are going through something, don't shame yourself. You know, this is a tough time, you know, and at the same time, when you be nice to yourself, you know, maybe you're going to see more things about you that you love than you could ever imagine. You might find more passion. You might find more ways to get out there. I took a walk for 2 hours, and it was the most beautiful thing I've done. And I never would have done that if I was in my own head, you know?
Well, you know, for me, even if I can't always be proud of myself, what I do endeavor to do, and I don't always succeed, is just try to forgive myself. You know, I mean, I screw up. I've had plenty of practice at it. I've had 64 years of practice at screwing up. I got a pretty good track record that way, and I suspect I have a few more years of screwing up in front of me too. So it's something that I'm continually working on. It's like, okay, you know what? Beat yourself up, take the beating, give it, take it, and let's, you know, try to get to the next one.
You told me something very powerful that really stuck with me. And I believe it was at the Hudson Social about a month and a half ago. And we were talking about this, and it's really, really important for anyone to hear, because this is something I keep with me really dearly. Just because in your mind you screwed up, or you have a vice, or something's going wrong, does not make you a bad person, or an unworthy person, or a unloved person, or someone that can't be successful, right? And I think that is so important, because when you told me that, it was something I needed really to hear in that time. Because, you know, it's very easy for us to get lost, and to be, you know, ashamed, and not to be proud, and to think we are this bad person. No, you're not. You're the total opposite. A lot of people that go through this are some of the most charismatic and compassionate people you could possibly meet. And don't let that trick you into thinking that you're not a good or worthy person because you're going through something, or you have an addiction, or you have a vice, or whatever it may be. You know, that stuck with me so much. And I mean, anyone who needs to hear that, I hope, you know, we're speaking to you right now. Me and Bobby will tell you from the bottom of my hearts that we love you. We mean that. And, you know, it doesn't, what you're going through doesn't make you a bad person. And
Yeah,
that,
makes you human.
yeah, it makes you human. And that's the thing. And sometimes we try to be superhumans. And, you know, I think, like you said, don't, you know, sometimes we're going to beat ourselves up. It's okay. You know, take the beating, but let's keep going, you know, and let's, hopefully next time we do it, we beat ourselves up less and less, and we build ourselves up more for that self-love that we deserve, that we may have been missing for a while. Because there's that void sometimes, and don't be afraid that that's something that you're feeling. And, you know, I that was such a powerful thing that you told me, and I needed to hear it in that time. And it's made me so much more, you know, it's interesting, because I never would have thought that during a quarantine where all this awful stuff is happening, that my inner peace would be as high as it is right now, in a sense. And I'm proud of that in a certain way, but I'm also, you know, worried, because I want to make sure I protect that when this all ends, you know?
Well, you know, the bad news is you're probably going to have more bad moments ahead of you, just as I am, just as we all are. I mean, that's, you know, that's the ante to life, you know.
Yeah.
And then we'll deal with those too. But for right now, enjoy feeling good and understand that you may feel bad again, and then you'll feel good again after that. You know, it's just hate to say it. I if there's another way through it, I don't know.
I will say every experience, for the most part, makes you stronger, makes you more compassionate, and makes you more in touch with the world in a sense. And there's nothing I love more than just being able to have these type of conversations, and then having these type of conversations with students. Like when we're, even just before everything happened, we had three really, really awesome, like probably three of the most of the more memorable programs we've had. And I mean, they're all memorable in different ways. I mean, it's very hard to compare one to the other, because anytime you do this and you meet someone, it's so powerful. But it was just, I think, I felt so connected because of my own experience. I felt myself grow in a sense as a human, right? And as a, program conductor, so to speak, right? I just felt myself as a human really growing during these times, and having these honest conversations with students is the most powerful thing ever, because they are so brilliant. And I think I was thinking about this too. Sometimes these seniors get a bad rap for being the social media generation, but they are so different than that. First of all, that wasn't something that they chose. That was something that kind of happened. That was how life. And these seniors in high school that I've been talking to, they're some of the most compassionate and brilliant kids I've ever met in my life. And they've already been through so much that I couldn't have imagined going through when I was 18. And now they're coming together. Their senior year was taken away from them, so to speak, and they're coming together, and they're staying positive, and they're building other people up, and they've been sharing stuff with the foundation and with each other, and they're building that community. And it's like, I'm so excited to watch this generation grow up and see how their kids end up, just because of I look up to these high school seniors, believe it or not. And any of these high school seniors that are listening, I'm not just saying that. You guys are heroes to me, and the same way Bobby's a hero to me. And
no, I think you got that reversed, John. Let me say what you're doing with your life, how you've chosen to create meaning from your life, is something that at your age I would have never been equipped to do. I give you all the credit in the world, and you should take some. You're doing something truly, truly exemplary, and I do hope every once in a while, I'm not saying every day and every moment of every day, but every once in a while, you can just take a step back and go, yeah, this is how you deal with crap.
I will say, talking to you has helped me so much with that, because you've seen me through a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And I think that's the thing that is so important, is that even when you are beating yourself up, because I'm just like you, I'm the biggest critic of myself. And if I hear even that, oh my man, a kid might have gotten a negative thought just from a talk, I'll think about that forever, instead of the good stuff that might have helped that student as well. And it's just like you said, being nice to yourself. And I'm starting to get there more than I was last year, which I think is important. If you see that every year kind of starting to grow, and you see that self-growth, it's important, because then it hopefully gives another young man or woman that's going through that same sort of hope. And when you see the connection from you to me to these students, and you see how intertwined it is, right? That's something that is so powerful and so cool. And that's what I think can help so many people. And that's what a community really is, when you're able to connect that. And someone like you, who's, you spent so much of your life in advertising, and now you're spending your, I remember you called it, this is another
my declining years.
Yeah.
I'm spending my declining years.
So, and all those experiences that you had during those other years have led up to this, and that you have been helping people this whole time, and you have been having this incredible impact from just being on a softball field tossing batting practice to a 13-year-old guy that looked up to you.
Hanging those curves so you can take it into the 12th rush. Yeah.
That's the key. Hit those bombs, and I don't know. To me, that just gets me excited, because to see you being able to do this, because it's something that you're meant to do, and seeing you go into these situations and helping people that so many people may have neglected, that my friend, that is to be commended.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I take it as high praise. I do, from you. I really, really do. But you know, I get a lot out of it. I can't tell you it's completely selfless. The things that I do, um, I get something out of. It's not complete selflessness.
I think that's the beautiful thing too about all this is, you could have these deep conversations and we could sit there and talk about Alabama football and LSU
Ah,
football as long as we
ah.
want. This is just,
Wyoming football, Montana football.
Wyoming, man, we got
Wyoming football. There's no football in the SEC. It's all up in Wyoming.
it's all the Mountain West, and it's funny. I mean, I was thinking about this too. It's just like right now, oh man, we'd be in the peak of baseball season too.
Yep.
I miss watching my Mets. This was the year that I thought was
This was their year. This was the 110 wins in the regular season and all the playoffs and World Series. This was the year.
Well, it's funny. I was talking about this with a few other Yankee fans. Like, I mean, and put it this way: hopefully, baseball does return, even if it's in September, right? Even if it's for 30 games and then the playoffs, right? I know it might be a little bit odd for most, and I mean, it could be really exciting. It's like a little league season, right? Like a high school season. The team, the Orioles could have a good month of September and make the playoffs, right? So it's like
that would be ironic, wouldn't it?
yeah, it would be wild. And then it's just like I think the thing about this was it's like, I think there's a real chance of Subway Series this year. I mean, the Mets aren't as the Yankees have a really good team, and a lot of people know that it's going to be a heck of a year for them, or at least on paper, right? That it's them and the Dodgers that people are talking about of being the.
Well, the Yankees are going to need a 50-man roster, I think.
I know. Everyone's hurt.
It's unbelievable. The harder they work out, the more they train, the more hurt they get.
It's crazy.
Somebody's going to have to explain the physics and the anatomy of this because
and it's funny though.
Players have never been better trained, and they're going down with injuries I never heard of.
And the thing about this too is like this Mets team reminds me of a lot of old school kind of scrappy Met teams that were built around a few stars but some role players. Like you got a guy like Alonso who's just my favorite. He's my favorite Met. You got Jeff McNeil who will run through a wall to catch a ball. And I mean, you just had an interesting team with still a pretty solid staff with DeGrom, and obviously Syndergaard needing surgery is tough. But I was very much looking forward to this Mets team. They had a lot of grit, and I'm hoping. I'm not losing hope yet because I think one thing just that's important in everything is having hope and having faith. And I'm having hope that this situation kind of dies down and when we get back to normal, man, we're going to enjoy a baseball game a lot more. We got to get ourselves to a Met Yankee game, Bobby. We haven't done that yet.
Oh, I think I told you. I've been to more Met games in the last 10 years than Yankee games. I just find Yankee Stadium to be I don't know. I'm not a fan of the new stadium. I do like Citi Field.
It's cool.
The games tend to come in less than 6 hours. Versus the American League, which is just.
I gotta tell you too, when Citi Field gets packed, it's buzzing. Like for the playoffs, it was so special that 2015 year.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that big year that Harvey had. I remember going out on a Saturday night to see him pitch just because I wanted to. He was a phenom, and I just wanted to see him pitch. And we got the ticks on StubHub and went out, and it was like a playoff game. It was in July. It was like a playoff game. It was pretty amazing.
And that's the stuff that's just, man, the energy of those baseball games. And there's something about being a Mets fan too, the constant underdog that we always are.
Yeah. No, yeah. Listen, I've always conceded that Met fans are better baseball fans than Yankee fans. Yankee fans are, we're kind of spoiled. I'm of the age where I paid my dues early on, the mid '60s to the mid '70s in the Horace Clarke, Gene Michael era. But since then, it's been, they go 3 years without a World Series appearance, and they want to fire everybody. It's pretty amazing.
And that's what my generation of Yankee fans will never understand. I mean, from 1996 to now, they really, I think, had one losing season. No, I don't think they had. I don't think they even had any.
Yeah, I don't know that they have. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, knowing they're going to win between 90 and 100 and 10 games every year.
Unbelievable. And I mean, that's the thing why I appreciate with you is because you've seen the dark times of being a Yankee fan. And true
Right.
Yankee fans, I will say, true Yankee fans, incredible baseball fans, because they respect the game. They get it. You know, my buddy, I got to give CJ Fleming a shout out. He's one of the Yankee fans that I could actually sit down and have a full conversation with and not get angry. And it's just cool because, you know, as a Met fan, I've lived during a really interesting time of Met baseball where it's been there. You know, we've never been, we've been pretty bad, but we've never been really horrible. You know, we're always hovering around, you know, a bad year. We'd have the 70 and 92 years, you know, but we're always hovering around, you know, a little bit below to a little bit above 500. So when the Mets have those good years, you know, you just want to sustain them because when the Mets are good, it's really good for baseball in general.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun, and it makes the city so alive too.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when I was growing up, I came of baseball. I was born in 55, so obviously I don't remember the Dodgers and Giants being in New York. And when I started following baseball, the Mets were just coming into being. You know, I have vague memories of, gosh, I mean, I remember going out to a Yankee game with my cousins. You know, we used to take the Woodlawn Elm subway down to Yankee Stadium, and I had older cousins, and I remember sitting out in the bleachers, and my cousin said, "There's Ted Williams," and I didn't know who Ted Williams was. It would have been 60 or 61, because that would have been the last year he was playing. But I knew it was something important. And in a long-winded way, the Yankees were kind of like the only show in town when I came of baseball age. So vaguely remember the tail end of like the Mantle Maris years. You know, I do have memories of the 64 World Series against the Cardinals. The Cardinals beat them in 7 games. It was an incredible World Series. Every game was like a Shakespearean drama. And, you know, but the Yankees, they went from 64, you know, winning the pennant, coming from behind, winning the pennant with Berra managing, to, I think it was 8th place in the 10-team league. It was before the divisions in 65. There wasn't like a decline. It was just off the cliff.
Yeah.
And then they just blew. And the Mets got really good in a hurry. I mean, it came out of nowhere. 68, they were showing like they got Hodges in the manage, and you know, they had, you know, the makings of the pitching staff that would, you know, propel them with, you know, you kind of knew that with Kuzman and Seaver and Ryan, you know, some of those guys were going to be good. Dick Selma, who's often forgotten, was another good young pitcher that they had. McGraw was the starter, and they eventually converted into a reliever. So, but they got good in a hurry. You know, I mean, it kind of, I don't think came out of nowhere, but it was not like they went from being terrible to being a 500 team for a few years to competing. They went from being terrible to 68. I can't remember what their record was, but I think it was the first year they didn't finish last.
And they won a World Series.
And then 69, they won the World Series. Yeah.
Miracle Mets. I wish I could have seen that.
So I had to listen to all the Mets fans, you know, while the Yankees were just sucking wind. You know, it's like rarely are the Giants and the Jets good at the same time. You know, in those days, the Mets and the Yankees were never good at the same time. It just didn't seem.
Oh my God. All right. Well, what I'll do, any last words before we stop the recording?
Yeah, be good to yourself. Remember, you know, the world will change some. I mean, you never go completely back to reset, but there's probably some good that will come out of this too. You know, we may appreciate ourselves in person a little bit more than we have. You know, we I think to some degree, we've used the digital age to potentially lose a little bit of the human contact, and I think maybe we'll come to appreciate that there's something additive in that. So hopefully some good will come out of it too.
That's why you are a legend, Bobby. This was a very fun conversation. I think it was very It always goes in so many ways, too. That's the amazing thing about it. We
Wyoming
always,
football, as long as we touch on Wyoming football, I feel that and one of these days you'll explain the Carson Wentz phenomenon to me. But
oh man, and Josh Allen too.
Josh Allen, like that, Wentz has never really done it. I don't get him.
He's
Was he overhyped, or am I missing something?